you hearing a pounding noise or no?
I'm not.
Okay, sorry, I was going to stop it next door. Okay. Welcome to everyone who's listening to me blather on here. We'll be starting shortly with today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. This is 5 superpowers for stronger donor engagement and raising more money in 2022. Barbara, if you could just say something, I want to make sure your video is showing. I'm not seeing it right now.
Yep, I'm right here, David.
Okay, perfect.
Excited to-
Thanks.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, let me just break through the wall here and say hello to everyone else who's listening to us chat. My name is David Jost. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Arreva, and I want to welcome you to today's session. This is 5 superpowers for stronger donor engagement and raising more money in 2022. We'll be starting in probably around 5 minutes here. We have a very large crowd today, a lot of people joining us. People are filling in right now. If you are with us right now and you are hearing me and seeing the slides, okay, feel free to just drop a note in the chat box. Say hello. Let us know how you're doing. If you care to share or want to forget, let us know about the weather wherever you happen to be. I myself am in sunny South Florida, so that is the last time I will say that. We will be starting shortly. Hello, everyone. My name is David Jost. I'm Chief Marketing Officer for Arreva, and I want to welcome you to today's session, which will be starting shortly in just about 2 minutes. It's entitled 5 Superpowers for Stronger Donor Engagement and Raising More Money in 2022, featuring Barbara O'Reilly, fundraising expert with Windmill Hill Consulting. If anyone out there would just do me a favor, drop me a note if you can hear me loud and clear, and if you can see the slide that is currently up as we get started. Again, lots of people joining right now. We will be starting shortly. Thank you. By the way, I should say, if you have any questions, any comments, you want to drop a note into the questions or the chat box at any time. This is very much an interactive session, and I will be serving as moderator today and chiming in to the expertise that Barbara shares with all of your thoughts and comments. So we would love to have your participation. Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's the time you've been waiting for. We are going to be starting today's session. We have a lot of people filing in right now. I want to just take that opportunity to let everyone know, no need to worry. If you're straggling in at this point, we're glad to have you here. We will be sending out a full on-demand recording of the entire session along with the slides afterwards. However, please do stick around. Please participate. This is a very interactive session. In just a moment, I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to do what we call a hard start, which gives us a great clean recording so they don't have to listen to the blather here as I go on and on. So just bear with me. And for those just joining us, please say hello. Let us know who you're from. Share something about your organization if you wish to, or just stay anonymous. You have the ability to ask questions at any time by using the questions box. You can either choose to identify yourself or just click down on the drop down and choose to be anonymous. And we will make sure that everything gets included in the question and answer session, or I will interject that throughout the workshop today. And anything that we don't get to, we will definitely follow up with you afterwards. So we'll be starting in just a moment. Welcome to today's exclusive interactive fundraising workshop featuring Barbara O'Reilly, CFRE, fundraising expert from Windmill Hill Consulting. This is 5 superpowers for stronger donor engagement and raising more money in 2022, and it's brought to you by Arreva. I want to welcome everyone here today. We're going to go ahead and jump right in, and I just want to let you know right now what's in store, and we're going to walk through just a quick overview here. We're going to be doing introductions. You can see our wonderful featured host, Barbara, here ready to be introduced, but I'm first just going to let you know that we're going to talk about kryptonite. We're going to hear from you. We want to talk to you about fundraising superpowers, and we've listed those here. We'll be unpacking those and unfolding those from our utility belts, if you will, throughout today's session. And so you can really see those for yourself. I want to just reiterate what I've been sharing, and that is that this is a very interactive session. We'll be having a full Q&A, so please stick around all the way till the end, and we will entertain as many questions as we possibly can. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just move to our introductions. And it is my pleasure, my honor, really, to be able to introduce to you Barbara O'Reilly. She is CFRE principal at Windmill Hill Consulting, and she has nearly 30 years of annual fund, major gifts, and campaign fundraising experience at major nonprofit organizations, including none other than Harvard University, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, Oxford University in England, and the American Red Cross. Her consulting firm, which I mentioned earlier, Windmill Hill Consulting, helps nonprofit organizations of all sizes cut through the noise and develop a profitable fundraising strategy that focuses on the resources, skills, and tactics they need to build more effective donor relationships and catapult their revenue. In other words, leap tall buildings in a single bound, I guess. She serves as immediate past president of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, AFP, Washington, D.C. Metro chapter, and as a former member of the advisory panel for Roger, the fundraising think tank in the UK. She's a frequent guest presenter at national and international conferences and various webinars, too numerous to mention, really across the industry. And she became an AFP master trainer in 2015. I am humbled. So I just want to introduce you, Barbara. You know, you're not wearing your cape today, but you are truly a superhero. So I would love to have you say hello and just give a little bit of an intro to everyone.
Thanks, David. I'm really delighted to be here. And thank you, everyone, for taking about an hour or so of your time. I know you all have busy schedules. You're wearing multiple hats. So I'm really honored myself to be here and that you have decided to choose this hour to spend with us. I'm excited to share some things I've learned over the years to help you raise more money over the next year during this continued tumultuous pandemic days that we're living in.
All right, terrific. Well, let's go ahead and just move forward to a very important piece of this, of the dynamic here. And I want to let you know, we want to hear from you. So again, we're speaking, you see our faces here, but my job here is I'm David Jost. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer with Arreva and MaestroAuction and Arreva company. But my role today is moderator. I am helping everything to flow. I'm making sure your voice is heard and that we're interjecting that. I'll have a few opinions of my own that I'll throw in as well from my experience in the industry. So we will be having some banter, but we'd love to hear from you. So share your questions, your insights, and your comments throughout our session. You can do that in the questions box or in the chat box. So we will see these and we'll be sharing them. So rest assured, even if we haven't commented on it, I will be interjecting that at the appropriate time. And I want to go ahead and just have us, really flex our interactive muscles right away by having you share with us the answers to a poll. And in keeping with our superhero theme, I'm going to launch a poll that's talking about what's your kryptonite. You should be seeing this right now, and just go ahead and answer as many of these as apply. And there's also an other section. And just to let you know, I'll just give you a little overview here, and please weigh in, Barbara. But kryptonite, for those of us who absolutely love Superman, trademark noted, etc. But superheroes, let's say, is something that takes the extremely powerful and at least tries to render them powerless. It might paralyze them, it may cause some fear. Typically, they'll remember in this scenario or the analogy that I'm talking about, that kryptonite is very often crushed into a million pieces or somehow diffused. So what would you like to say about kryptonite and let people know as they're thinking about what their kryptonite is, Barbara?
Yeah, the kryptonite, you're right, David. The kryptonite is the thing that it will seemingly bring the superhero down. And if you remember, the kryptonite was like just a tiny little rock or brick. I mean, it was barely anything that was significant. So this is about what are those things that are hindering you from raising more money? Where are you sort of feeling those obstacles? What's the thing that is just holding you back from stepping into revenue growth through your fundraising that you really just want to figure out this year?
There's a bunch of suggestions that we've heard out there, and I'm seeing some that are coming in as you're answering this. We'd love to have everyone participate. It'll just make it a much more interactive session. But I've heard so much about donor retention. I know that's something you talk a lot about, so I'm certainly fueling the fire there in terms of people thinking about that. But are there other things out there that you hear oftentimes that maybe people could say, oh yes, me too? Because we'd love to hear how many people are really experiencing these things, because we're all in this together.
Yeah, I would say that donor retention is definitely one of the kryptonites. But if you even take it down below that level, below to understand what the causes are, it's lack of investment in the organizations, it's boards not feeling fully engaged or wanting to feel fully engaged in fundraising. It's the lack of infrastructure to be able to raise more money. So those tech tools, the staff, the budgets to be able to do what they really need to do to create those meaningful donor relationships. All of that are the things that will lead to poor donor relationships, poor donor retention, and really overstretched staff.
Yeah, Barbara, I'm going to just share with you. I'm going to be showing you. So if you haven't answered the poll, I'm going to show you all the results so we can sort of see that you are not alone. No matter what you put down, someone else is experiencing that. But I've heard things from, someone saying, we need a marketing person. I'm not a graphic designer. That just came in. I literally do everything from gift entry to donor solicitation, people talking about board member engagement. I've heard multiple things regarding in some fashion or another, getting donors to continue to contribute, donor retention, if you will. I've seen people say things about donor acquisition, finding new donors, reaching young donors. There are a lot of things out there. So I'm just going to stop the poll and I'm going to share the results of we only had really 4 choices. There's some others, so I kind of shared those, but there's a lot of things centering around the uncertainty. Imagine that. Right. Yeah. And, time and resources, how can you do more with the same or less? And, needing the right strategies, the technology. So lots of different things there to just get us started. So there is no magic answer here. I really just wanted to be able to take a moment to share this with you all as we move forward. And I'm going to be taking us through the superpowers, if you will. So you've now seen that everyone has a kryptonite, right? And, the great news is moving us to that first superpower is, we're going to be looking through these. I'm sorry, I missed a slide here, but we're standing there looking out, hopeful, knowing there's our solutions and that we have the powers. We're going to hear about them today. By the way, 5 is a great number for marketing. There are a lot more. We'll be interjecting them in here. But, the first one is addressing your kryptonite. And really, I guess I should have called it smashing your kryptonite, right?
That's right.
So take us away.
Yeah. So let's go to the next slide, David. I think we can just dive right in. You know,
Yeah.
this is a competitive landscape. There are, what is it now? I think 1.7, 1.8 million nonprofits in the US alone. So if you are all feeling the pinch, you're feeling that competition, that's one of the reasons why. And organizations of all sizes were really stretched and experiencing severe issues around the pandemic when the pandemic started. So, and you know, while we see things are leveling out a little bit, and hopefully we're all sort of in a pattern now, in a cadence for the way we do our work. The reality is things are still competitive, and frankly, also things are our donors' attention is there are lots of competition for those donor attention. So it isn't just what our organizations are sending out. Everyone is feeling pulled in so many different directions. So all of those emails that you spend a lot of time putting together may or may not necessarily be read because your donor is getting 100 plus emails a day and their attention span is really, really short. So this is one of the biggest elephants in the room, so to speak. It's a highly competitive landscape and continues to be so. Go to the next slide, please.
It should be advancing. Okay, hold on. There we go.
There we go.
It's the elephant in the room, I guess, right? Or on the track, right? Yeah.
No worries. And so, you know, we continue to live here. We are almost in year, 3 of the pandemic. We've gone through 2 years, which mostly 2020 and all of 2021. We're going to be entering the 3rd year, and yet things are still uncertain. And while there's, while there's sort of this differing perspectives about what the new workplace will look like and how we will all step into a new normal. The reality is, frankly, that throughout all of this uncertainty, what has not been uncertain is our donors. They have continued to step up year over year to meet the needs of our communities, to meet the needs of our world. They have said in surveys that I saw in early 2020, right in the beginning of the pandemic, donors who were polled said that they will continue to give and might give more because the needs were so great, because they knew that their communities and the country were, and their country, wherever they were, was suffering. So donors have continued to step up, and we have to remember that. We have to trust in them to make those decisions themselves, how they're going to support and continue to support your organizations. So yes, the world around us continues to spin in wild ways, but we need to be sure that we are keeping ourselves focused forward and trusting in those things that will help us get to the finish line.
Yeah, and I think I mean that's terrific. I would add to that. You know, it kind of shook me when you just said we're entering into year 3, but you're right. You know, yeah. Here's something that I've heard said, and I think it really rings true. It's a little hard to hear sometimes, but wait and see is not a strategy. And right. So if you think back to the beginning of this and take yourself back to those who waited, or those who said, we're just not going to communicate, we're going to wait till right out the storm, mm-hmm. They missed the opportunity. And one of the things that I've also heard is that if you are not communicating and taking action, that your donors are assuming that you don't need the money, or mm-hmm. that you don't need their help, or that you've shut down. So you need to communicate. And lastly, there is something that people talk about a lot termed ROI. There's also something called COI, which is the cost of inaction. Mm. So there is a real cost to not doing anything. Even if you're doing the wrong thing, learn and grow. That's my 2 cents.
That's right. Exactly. And we know from 2020 that those organizations that stopped fundraising for whatever reasons in the early days of the pandemic actually have a much, much steeper hill to climb. And it really determined whether or not they were able to get through that that year financially solvent and strong. But the organizations that continued that cadence of donor communications, of solicitations, of just doing what they could in the the sort of the panoply of everything that was happening, they kept going and they actually fared much better. So as we all know, this fundraising it can't be turned on and off like a light switch. And so we've got to keep going. And if you stop fundraising, you have to be prepared that it's gonna be much, much more difficult when you try to restart it.
Very true.
And so this is one of the kryptonites that was mentioned in the poll. We know that there's the nonprofit sector is not excluded from the Great Resignation. We have a lot of limited staff bandwidth for those staff who do remain in nonprofits. There's a whole other issue around lack of investment, a continued lack of investment, and the financial uncertainties that many nonprofits face definitely contribute to that. So staff, many of you are feeling this. You're being pulled in lots of different directions. And so we've got to make sure that we continue to advocate for continued investment in everything that we need in our development departments to be able to continue to raise money. And so it shows up in poor donor retention. This is on average, in the nonprofit sector, on average, nonprofits are losing 43% of their donors each and every year. If you just stop and think about that for a minute, that's more than 50% of almost 60%, in fact, of donors who are not coming back. Our colleagues, our peers in the for-profit sector, in retail and in commerce, they are looking at customer retention. They're looking at that as the #1 driving metric. So anything below 90% for many companies is viewed as, sounding the alarms. We've got to figure out, how do we course correct quickly? So we've got a real problem in our sector. And if we think back to the previous slide about that limited bandwidth, this is a whole lot of churn that we are facing. And it's just not an efficient and effective use of the limited bandwidth. First-time donors. So many of you probably saw a surge in contributions from first-time supporters who were stepping up to support your charity because it resonated with them. It was a need that they felt was needed to be met. But 80% of those will not come back on average. Again, this is sector average. Your own metrics for your own organization may be very different. But think about that, 80% of those donors are not coming back. So we, again, want to make sure that as we think about that overall kind of pipeline of our supporters, we have to look at it from every stage. And those first-time donors, no matter the size, we often will sort of disregard the $10, $5, $25 first-time supporters. But frankly, first-time donors don't ever give their very best gift the first time. They're really just sort of they're dipping their toes in the water. So we want to ensure that we're front-ending that stewardship for those first-time supporters so they feel welcome. By the time we get to sort of repeat donors, so those are the ones who've been giving year over year, monthly donors, of course, those are the best retained donors. And these two alone, on average, they're much higher, but we can't take those for donors for granted either. So we sometimes default to, well, they've been giving to us year over year, they're going to keep giving to us, and that is that doesn't really value them and their decision making that goes in, all the decision making that goes into their choices. So we really want to make sure that we're continuing to steward and keep those donors engaged and connected. Because David, as you mentioned earlier, when donors don't hear from those organizations they support, they think, well, they don't really need me anymore. They don't need my gift.
It's interesting, and and you were sharing a little bit about this, but in the for-profit space, there's always a lot of talk about customers, right? And how much it costs to gain a new customer versus really satisfying and re-engaging in the lifetime value of a customer. I mean, that's really analogous to this, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure. And there are definite benchmarks for the cost to raise $1, and certainly the cost to acquire new donors is much higher than it is to retain those donors. So if we're even just looking from a cost perspective, there is a balance. I'm not at all suggesting that you don't invest in acquisition, because that's still, you've got to feed that pipeline. But it's if we are doing that to the exclusion of, or to the detriment of, the donors we already have, and all the ways that we can continue to steward and communicate with them in the ways that are necessary, then we are wasting our money, right? And so we're spending it in the wrong way.
I think one of the other things that I just honed in on here, and then we'll move on, is the monthly, or oftentimes this is called recurring donors, right? Yeah. So you're talking, these are not mutually exclusive. So you have a first-time donor coming in, and if you can get that person to really become a recurring donor, that's one way to engage them and then thank them, using a lot of ways to make sure that's happening either automatically or as part of your rigor. But the other thing is that it's incredibly valuable because right off the gate, just by making them a recurring donor, you have increased the yield from that donor who may have otherwise not given as much. So there are stats out there that vary, but oftentimes 5 times as much is donated by those who are recurring donors during the course of a year than a single one-time donor. And the difference is having them become a recurring donor. There isn't always a lot of difference in terms of their makeup or their behavior, certainly always distinctions, but that's important to note.
Yeah, and it allows them to be able to stretch, make a larger gift that they wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable making in a one-time contribution. So
Sure.
you get them, if they can stretch and make a larger gift and pay it over monthly installments, that's great. And by paying attention to those who are first-time donors who sign up to be monthly donors right out of the gate, that's important to note to them in your communications. Thank you so much. You become, your monthly contribution is going to help us do this, this, and this each and every month. I mean, it's important to be able to make that correlation to that donor so they can see how important their sustaining support is to your organization.
Absolutely. I'm going to move us forward to the next superpower or to the next slide, excuse me. Here, just showing this number. We talked about that. I don't know if you want to say more on that.
I think we can move on. Yeah.
Okay. And then taking us to this question of, which is kind of implied from the previous, right? You need to understand who your donors are. So how does that superpower play into things, Barbara?
So there's a lot of different ways that we can be looking at our donor base. And so often as organizations, and certainly our boards and our executive leaders, sometimes are saying, we need more donors, when in fact, you probably have tens of thousands of names on your file that are, some of whom are donors, but many of them are not. And so we want to, before we start searching for those sort of mystery unicorn donors who are outside of our orbits, stop and look at who's already in your file, who's already giving to you, and let's resist the urge to keep acquiring new people outside of our realms, because the donors that you have are that you want to pay attention to. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
So look at all of the groups that are involved with your organization. So whether they're volunteers, whether they're your annual donors, whether they're subscribers, either social or newsletter, whether they are your event attendees, they might be networks of your boards. And this is important to be able to sort of get a good overview of who are all of these in your orbits and networks now, and look at them to say who's giving and who's not giving. So some of those newsletter subscribers, perhaps maybe you've been mailing to them, but they haven't converted to becoming donors yet. So worth revisiting and seeing how you can change that messaging to get them to, because they're already raising their virtual hand to say, I want to stay connected to you. I want to keep up to date on what you're doing.
Well, and one way to build reach as well is that I kind of look at this, who knows you and who knows you, right? So this networks of boards piece is very big, right? And, we're actually, our next session, I'll plug it later, is about board, how to really get your board to fundraise and get them engaged. And we're going to be talking about that. One of the things to do is to be able to allow the boards to leverage their personal and professional networks, among other things. But certainly your volunteers, know folks who you may not know yet, who can become donors, who can be can be communicated to about your organization. Same with just about any other group. And so looking at peer-to-peer networking and fundraising, that's a big element here. This is kind of the beginning of that web, if you will, if you're sort of taking that out in concentric circles.
Yeah, for sure. And for major gifts, I am a big believer that organizations of all sizes should and can raise major gifts. The major gift amount, how you define a major gift, is going to be different for every organization. So for many organizations, it might be $1,000, it might be $5,000, it might be 10, but for others, it might be 50, 100, 250, and so forth. So you want to make sure that you're devising a way to identify who are those who have large gift capacity within your organizations, and are, and again, within good humor and good jest with our dear board members. And I sit on boards myself, so I'm not excluded from this. But so often there's this, well, they just sort of drop out of the sky. But we really do want to understand who our best supporters are, first by defining what a major gift is for us, and then looking at our file and understanding what those trends are and who has that capacity. Who do we think, based on their previous giving, based on screening that we might do, based on other patterns that we can see, who are those who are really can step into and are ready to step into those larger gifts.
So don't wait for your prince to come is the alternate title for
Yes.
this slide, right?
Exactly.
Right. Okay. We're crushing dreams with unicorns and princes, but there's lots of great news here ahead. So, and I don't know what's going on with the screen here. Okay, let's see.
Yeah, so another way to look at your file is to do kind of the old-fashioned segmenting. So think about these 3 buckets: your current donors, your new donors, your lapsed donors. And when you're thinking about who you might do some more personalized outreach to, or who you might ask your boards to do some personalized outreach, you could do it in these 3 buckets. You might think about those donors who have been the largest over their lifetime, who've given the largest amount, those who've been the longest. So that does not necessarily mean they have been given the most to you. They might have been giving to you at really low levels that would never pop to your radar. So that's worthwhile. And in fact, those donors, those especially at their very low level, maybe $10, $25 a year, they are often the best primed for deferred giving, for planned gifts, bequests. The studies have shown that that's sort of their general behavior pattern. So think about those. Think about, again, I mentioned earlier, those new donors. We really want to make sure that we're fighting against that likelihood for high attrition amongst new donors. So try to find a way to be able to do some more personalized outreach. And definitely those lapsed donors, so those who have become inactive, sometimes they really just they've just forgotten. Maybe things that you've sent them have fallen to the wayside, or maybe didn't reach them. Maybe they just completely forgot. But there might be some other reasons. Maybe they've had changes in their own personal situations or their philanthropic priorities. So taking a look at those lapsed donors to say, who are these that we really do want to try to reactivate? Recognizing, in fact, that the likelihood, if a donor hasn't given in probably the last, maybe at most 3 years, the likelihood of reactivation is very, very small. So I think we estimate about less than 5% will be reactivated. We did see in 2020 and 2021 that there were some higher than expected reactivation rates amongst donors. So those who had sort of long lapsed came back and made first-time gifts or renewed gifts to the organizations they had previously supported because the needs were so urgent. So pay attention to that and make sure that you're looking at who are the ones that we need to stay and keep connected and close to us.
Yeah, a couple of things here, Barbara. One, I would just say, this, so certainly we're going to be talking about technology later, but I just would say in general, however you're doing that, capturing good data, good reliable data in a consistent way is going to be very critical. So, you may have a notion of where people sit and how they fit into these different buckets, but the better job you do of bringing things in and being able to really have that in a unified fashion with a database, wherever that is, the more you're able to pull up a live bunt or a last year but not this year report, or be able to look and segment your donors. So that's going to be a very key piece. And then the other part, I couldn't help but thinking, when you're talking about a lot of reasons someone may be a lapsed donor, and it just reminds me of one, again, lots of superpowers that we're going to throw in that aren't part of the 5 because they didn't fit on slides. But I think one of those is gratitude and giving. And the more that you can do, I don't know what the numbers are lately. It's been something like 45% of donors feel that they, do not recall at least being thanked when they gave their gift. That's a big reason you may have a lapsed donor and you may not even be aware of it. So if you can find ways to automate that, to put that into your rigor and make that a best practice and adopt a culture of gratitude within your organization, you're going to be miles ahead there. So just a couple of little gems to add.
Yep, for sure. So another way to be thinking about this also is, what are those revenue sources? So how are your donors giving? Are they giving through direct mail? And I definitely am a proponent of direct mail. It is not dead. It is a driver, an anchor for lots of different ways that donors give, and their channel of giving does not necessarily reflect their preferred communications channel. So just remember that if somebody gives online, they may still really like to receive those direct mail pieces that you're sending out to them. The events. So this is in this example, this is sort of more heavily skewed to events. And what we saw in 2020 was those organizations that were very or almost entirely driven by their events, their fundraising events, were really up the creek without a paddle. So we've got to make sure that we've got that base of strong relationship fundraising activities in place, so that when something else happens that sort of derails our plans, like not being able to do in-person events, that we've got those, we're well covered. And so understanding, how many donors are giving monthly, are they giving online, are they giving offline, are there other ways that they have been supporting you, is important, just to understand where to focus your limited bandwidth.
Well, you know what, this is great stuff. And I always love whenever data comes up, right? Because you can put data and you can support lots of different ways of looking at it. And one thing I would just offer is that while you're looking at these different levels, you certainly are looking at this and you maybe think, well, then we should be doing everything related to events, or maybe we can't do events. But one of the things that you want to keep in mind is it's also about, it's not just about, how are they giving? It's really about how much they're giving or how valuable they are in these different, areas. So for example, we just spoken about recurring giving or monthly giving. If you're looking at 5% of donors are giving in this fashion, that doesn't mean they're giving 5% of your, of the dollars, right? They could be giving 5 times as much. They just happen to be giving there, or that's where the gifts are coming from. And if you can take someone and convert them from a one-time giver to a monthly giving, and that increases the yield for them, that's going to be very, very useful. So I think that's an important thing to look at. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Barbara.
Yeah, I would say that, this is where the cost to raise a dollar analysis is really important. So being able to say, looking perhaps long and hard at those events and how much you have been raising from those events in the past, how much was it costing to do it? And were you actually raising money, or were you breaking even or losing money? And so what we saw, especially over the last couple of years, is that organizations that had historically had events, fundraising events, and switched them to either non-events or, sort of more robust solicitation campaigns around perhaps when that event would have happened, were probably raising even more money. I've heard from many nonprofits that they were raising more money, not doing the event. So looking at where your donors are and what your cost to raise that dollar is, and now in this new world order, what makes sense in terms of your budget, in terms of the ways that your donors are showing how they prefer to support you.
Well, I love what you just said about, just the maybe doing events and not raising as much as you would like to, or any of these really. I think it's important to be thinking about this too. How do you optimize that giving opportunity? So one way you're doing that is through monthly giving. You're saying, here's someone that has a propensity and intention. They understand the impact and they want to give. How do you increase the amount that they can give by spreading that out over time, or just making sure that they're reminded and you're keeping them updated? For online, if you're doing online donations, there are best practices. I mean, we always share them. Lots of stuff is out there. And if you're working with someone like Barbara, you hear this as well. Setting up things where people can cover the processing fees on their donation forms, making sure that people are able to do giving in lots of ways. They can do tribute gifts. They can do in honor of. They can do peer-to-peer campaigns. They can do donations for different funds. There's lots of ways to do that. And then similarly, I just think of a session, that we have coming up where I'll use an example of a golf fundraiser. Lots of folks are doing them, and it's outside. It's a place where you can have a lot of things going on. Board members oftentimes love golf fundraisers. The people who are golfing love golf fundraisers, and it's because who doesn't love golf? It's going to be great to be. Don't answer that question if you don't. But if you're, you're out, you're having a great time, and that's an important part of why you do things. But the big thing is how do you put the fundraising into your golf fundraiser, as one example, right? So if you're going to be having everyone gathered and they're going to be at this, there's things that you could do by making sure that you're continuing to tell your story throughout about why you have a need, making it easy for them to give through technology or whatever it is. And, that's just one example. There's a lot of ways within all of these. There are layers to the things that we're talking about today. So that's why I just say, conversation is good. If anyone has great ideas, I see some coming in, we share those as well, because we don't have all the ideas here. I mean, we're a vessel really to be able to share a lot of the good being done.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so another way, we've talked about ways to analyze your data, understand your different segments, understand sort of the trends that you of how they give and where the ways in which they've been supporting your organizations. But then another way to think about your donor audience is who are they? What has motivated them? The surveys are wonderful opportunities to elicit a few insights into what brought them to your organization, what's important to them, when do they want to hear from you, in what ways do they want to hear from you. If you've got the capabilities to do a pop-up survey after an online donation is made, that's a great insight into what was the online donor experience like. Are there tweaks, that you can make to even streamline it even further? If you don't have the capability, you certainly could do a little survey that's sent by email. But the point is that you really want to ask your donors a little bit about them so you can understand what's driving them, what's keeping them connected and interested in your organization.
Why do donors give?
All right, so there have been many studies, and this is that look into donor motivations, and this is one of them. And this is actually pretty consistent, although this comes from a high net worth philanthropy study of U.S. Trust clients. These are pretty consistent with other donor surveys I've seen, or other donor research. So consistently, that belief in the mission, the belief that their gift can make a difference, is absolutely the top two drivers. So when we think about even our own gifts of the organizations that we support or that we volunteer to be involved in, if we actually sort of reflect it, it's probably these two right here. There's a personal connection. There's a cause that is deeply resonating with us and who we are, and we believe that our contribution of time, our contribution of dollars, will make a difference in some way to solving a problem. All of these other issues here that or reasons for why donors give are also important to recognize. I would say that the tax benefit is often sort of viewed as the top, but let's be honest, although those who can itemize their deductions are sometimes looking for those charitable deductions for their contributions, they're still not just making contributions for the sake of that deduction. They're still being very intentional about where they make their contribution. So you want to be remembering that they are giving to you and through you. So there's a colleague that in the UK who's got his agency is called Blue Frog, and he said it so succinctly when he said, they are not your donors, you are their charity. So even just reframing how we think about our donor relationships in that way signals that it's their mission, it's their personal connections to this cause, and their desire to make a difference that's driving the contributions to and through you.
Terrific. I love this. It's everything always has another layer to it, like I said. And when you're talking about looking at why donors are giving, and you're looking at things like they believe in the mission of your organization, they believe a gift can make a difference, it's important to be thinking the way that you're going to be able to get to more donors and have them give is to be able to tell your story, to be able to build a strong case of, for support, right? So, oftentimes that's overlooked. And I would tell you that I'm going to make a little bit of a leap here. So Barbara, correct me if this doesn't make sense, but when you're talking about believe their gift can make a difference, that's also a reason why donors continue to give. Mm-hmm. So, it's important not just to share the impact when you're soliciting the gift, but to let donors know what the impact of their giving was, to keep them updated.
For sure. And in fact, it's that reporting back, which is probably the most important part of the communication cycle with the donor, letting them know that their gift, A, was received, B, mattered, and C, had an impact in some way, not necessarily their $50 contribution, but collectively, how did donor philanthropy help your organization move forward to solving the problem that you were set up to solve? So that whole sense of, am I needed? Is my gift needed in this organization's mission? That's if the donors don't hear and don't understand that, they're going to think I'm not needed. I'm not, I'll go elsewhere where they could use my contribution a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. This moves us to the next superpower, which is not about investments per se. It's balancing your portfolio. And I guess otherwise, again, not putting all your eggs in one basket, or not dropping the basket, or right. Right. Neither is a good idea.
Right. And so, thinking about it, if anything, 2020 was the great reset, was a great wake up call. So the way we did our fundraising pre-pandemic is no longer the way we have been doing our fundraising now. And certainly as we get out of, whenever we get out of all of this, we want to be thinking about, are we able to mitigate ourselves against and our organizations against further and future liabilities like this? Or risks to our revenue streams. And so really taking a hard look at all the different ways that we're fundraising and what no longer serves us, what is no longer the most profitable way to be, receiving money. And are we balancing ourselves so that we don't put ourselves at great risk? Like, for example, those organizations that were heavily focused on raising money from events. I talked to a couple of organizations at the very early days of the pandemic in 2020, and they said to me, well, we have our big 3 fundraising events this year. And I said, well, you're going to have to think of a plan B, because I don't think we're getting out of this anytime this year. And there was that pause, and I could hear the sort of the panic and the worry, because they hadn't done the due diligence of setting up that individual giving program in a way that could exist and thrive outside of those events.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do a lot of event fundraising, whether it's live, virtual, or hybrid. The words we use more now than ever, right? Yep. But our story always is about building year-round fundraising. It's always the giving season, and there's always things that you could be doing. So, so understanding and managing your revenue breakdown.
So this is really just looking at who are our donors. We talked in the last section about understanding those donors as one of those superpowers, but then also looking at not just those who are new and those who are current or lapsed, but how does it break down individual versus institutional? And we know from all of the Giving USA reports that are released every year that individuals comprise about 90% of the 480 billion that's contributed. So last year, so in 2021, so in 2020, so it was 2021 report for 2020 results, it was about $480 billion that was contributed in the US. And about 90% of that came from individuals, whether it was bequests, family foundations, or individual contributions. So just think about that for a minute. We often default to, foundations or corporations, but in fact, they are smaller pieces of the pie. Corporations are about 5%. So your organization may feel like your own balance between individual and institutional may be more heavily skewed in one way or the other, but you really do want to understand where are the best opportunities for continued growth in fundraising, and can you weave in a little bit more that to allow for any changes. So if you are heavily foundation funded, do you, if those foundations or your top foundations stop funding you, do you have that pipeline of other revenue sources, of other funding sources that can balance that potential loss? Yeah. So really taking a hard look at where those numbers fall.
When you talk about institutional individual giving, I just saw a blog that actually went out, and it was written by one of our partners, Double the Donation, that works to facilitate matching giving, and just really kind of supporting making the case and talking about the value to your donors in a very strategic way about the value of workplace giving. Because again, it's back to that optimization. If you can find a way to activate much easier ways to be able to bring in matching giving, or to be able to leverage those programs or corporate programs that are out there. New donors is a big part of it, but again, the cost of acquiring new donors, not that you should not do it, but it's going to be the place where that's icing on the cake, or it's putting water in the bucket that hopefully you don't have a hole that is, that is leaking with lots of donor retention. So, you get the maximum benefit from those efforts when you're making sure you're shoring up every opportunity everywhere else.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, let's move forward to.
All right, so these are some samples of people who come to mind when someone says, all right, we need to get some major gifts. And how many of us have been around a board table where a board member says, oh, well, if only, we need to get Bill Gates to give us money. We need to give Oprah. Now it's Mackenzie Scott. And so these are sort of the usual suspects. But in fact, really, your major donors are going to be people who are known to you in some way, shape, or form, or sort of those second degrees. If we can go to the next slide, David.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, talk about those. They are going to be people who you have access to, who believe in your mission, and who have that capacity. I think it's on the next slide, if you can go there. Yep, there we go. So I often, when I'm working with organizations and their boards, especially, and their executive leaders, when we start this brainstorming around those larger gift donors, they almost always start with who has the money. And inevitably that next part of that sentence will be, oh, so-and-so family, such and such organization, they have a lot of wealth, they should be giving to us. But that I often recommend we banish that phrase, they should be, or she should be giving to us, because they have to believe. If we remember that a couple slides ago, the top reasons why donors are giving to us, it's because of that mission. It's a personal connection. So they have to really, this has to be aligned with who they are as a philanthropist, as a donor. And we will see that in the way that they give to other causes. And then, do we have access to that person? Does this make sense? Because when boards get a little bit tense, when they start to brainstorm and come up with all these ideas for names, if we don't have access, if there isn't that belief in your mission, and that isn't for everybody, and we don't have access to them, then it's just a wish list, which is not particularly the most strategic. Can we go to the next slide?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then a couple other ways to be thinking about how to prioritize your time is really thinking about these mid-level donors. We often forget them. Let's be honest, we focus on the kind of the broader base, and then we focus on the major gifts, and we forget that we've got that sort of intermediary group of people who have stepped up. Maybe they're making larger annual gifts. They're not quite at that, whatever you define as a major gift. So I use this as an illustration to show that there's a way to be thinking about prioritizing your time so that you're continuing to engage those donors up the ladder, so to speak, to continue to give in different ways. And on the next slide, you'll see that the organizations that are focusing on their mid-level giving programs are showing that those donors they have higher retention for sure. And this is one example of those sort of mid-level donors. I think in this category, it was the 1,000 to 249 up to about 5,000. Yeah. And they have higher retention. And they actually also are, in fact, a strong foundation for growing in major gift programs.
Well, there you have it. As a middle child, I can tell you that, that it's great to see this redemption here, that middle donors matter, and they're very valuable. So I've been able to really let that all go right now. So let's move forward to the next one.
Exactly. And so really thinking about, when you are reflecting on where your large gift potential is within your file, whether they are, those who are not yet connected to your organization, but would perfectly align with your mission, or when you're evaluating within your organization's, your donor database, those organizations that are focusing on in some way those mid-level donors will have a good opportunity to grow a major gift program and a major gift pipeline.
Question for you, Barbara, is so how would you describe in briefly a mid-level giving program? What kinds of elements would that have, or what would that entail?
So it is not quite as hyper personalized one-on-one relationship building as a traditional major gift program is.
Yeah.
And it's not quite that broad base of communications, a little bit more hands-off communications style and strategy that you would have for your general annual giving program. It's a little bit of both. So it's usually a bigger portfolio, sometimes 250 to 300 names, kind of give or take. And it is a little bit more customized messaging. There's those donors have a contact, the name of a contact, within the organization in case they have questions.
Yeah.
They're invited to, special events that the organization is holding that would be nice for them to attend. These generally are not the ones who are really interested in the galas, but definitely invite them. So it's more customized. I'm not at all suggesting you create a whole new communications content calendar for them. You can repurpose things, but if they feel like them, it's only for them. Branded giving societies are a really nice way because it gives them that sense of an identity with others. That's sort of a high level overview of a mid-level giving program.
Well, and I think if I could read between the lines, it's a bit of part of having a mid-level giving program is not neglecting to pay attention to the mid-level givers, right? So it's about it's a more inclusive, broader approach, and whether it's inviting to events and making sure the communication channels are there, as well as some specific things. So that's great.
For sure.
So here we are. We're talking about elevating donor engagement and setting the stage for major gifts.
Mm-hmm. So this is the world in which we live now. We have lots of different multi-channel, offline, online communication channels that every one of us is using each and every day. And it's very much the case for our donors. So in our own communication strategies, we really do want to be thinking about the multi-channel approach, because if we're only communicating in one or the other, we're going to miss just by nature of how we are all hyper connected and all overwhelmed with things. Our message is going to get lost if it isn't multi-channel. And we know from research that multi-channel fundraising is in fact more successful. It is more effective. And I think there's a chart on the next slide, David.
Mm-hmm.
So this is from a study that the folks at Next After did at the end of 2020. And what they found was, and it was a small sample size, but I think this is a really important snapshot, that those donors that were communicated with offline with an email, online, or multi-channel, and multi-channel was sort of everything. It was offline, online, phone. They were 3 times more generous. They had, I think, double the retention rates. So the point is that you're meeting the donors in many places where they are, and you're catching their attention in ways that you wouldn't necessarily by just using one communication channel. So think really about how can you make this possible in your organization. So when you sort of default to, we're just going to do email because it's cheaper, I don't have the budget, I don't have the bandwidth, all the lists of reasons why, the organizations that stopped communicating, and certainly stopped communicating offline during the early days of the pandemic, had a harder time coming back, and lost donors because they weren't communicating with them, and the messages they were sending out were being lost. So these are just a couple of different ways to be thinking about how you continue to engage and inspire your donor. There are a number of different ways that you might do through one-on-one visits, more personalized appointments, site visits for sure, small cultivation events, opportunities to to keep them informed, and the sort of update webinar or teleconference, however you want to do it. That's a really great way to engage those mid-level donors, to give them that insider look at what's going on and where your organization's going and how their support is continuing to help move your mission forward.
Well, and I think, also it's, again, kind of hammering home on that same point. It's important, the message is really important. Communication is key to the message, not just how, but how you're sharing that, how specifically you can tell them about what your gift will mean, what it could mean, and what it did mean. And then, also back to that notion of really being able to tell your story with impact and making the case for support. And I think that kind of segues nicely to the next slide.
Yeah, so this is here. If you remember nothing else from this session today, but I hope that you do remember other things. This is important to reflect on. And this comes from Penelope Burke, who is a Canadian researcher. She coined the phrase donor-centered fundraising. She has written extensively for the last, 20, 25 years about what drives donors. And what she said was, fundraising underperformance is a failure to communicate. In other words, if our donors don't know that their gift is helping in certain ways, that their gift has been received, if they don't feel like they're connected, and all the stories that we tell and the reports on impact, we're not inspiring them. The donors aren't seeing a way that their gift could be upgraded, that they can continue to invest in your organization. And frankly, also, that's how those larger gift donors come into play, because they will give over and over until the point where they're so captivated by your work that they find compelling that they need to make a larger gift. And so we have to remember that when we're feeling stuck and the numbers are reflecting that, let's go back and think about how we're communicating with them.
Terrific. I am going to give us a little bit of a preview of what's ahead here, because I know you've been staying with us, and there are a lot of great questions that are coming up right at this point. I'm going to let you know that right now our next superpower answers some of those. But before we go into this, this is really just talking about the types of things that can really help you with a lot of the questions around how to do more with less or the same amount, how to be able to focus on the right things. So I'll share that in a moment, but coming up very shortly, so please do stay tuned. We're going to be having a session on Q&A. I've got a number of these teed up for you, Barbara, right now. We're also going to be giving you an opportunity to have a free consultation on fundraising and donor relationship management. Could be 5 minutes, could be longer, could be an hour, just to be able to talk about what you're doing and how you might be able to look at some of these best practices or whatever you'd like to look at, from software demos to what have you. We'll also give you a chance to stay in touch and connect with Barbara. So that's ahead. And we're going to be just moving forward with this piece right now to let you know. Let's consider this. This presentation has been brought to you by Arreva, and we've had some questions about, do we have recommendations on software to track and connect with donors? I'm going to share with you right now, as I kind of walk through this, that the recommendations wherever you go are to make sure that you're bringing things in to a unified database, that you're not dealing with siloed solutions in lots of different places, or even possibly not dealing with everything online or in one sort of repository. So you may be dealing with manila folders, Excel spreadsheets, an event software. You may be dealing with a fundraising software, a peer-to-peer software, golf fundraising software. The more you can do to bring things together, however you do that, so that you have a good 360-degree view of your donor base and of your volunteers and your board and the organizations and all the relationships, the better off you are. So that's a very important thing to be thinking about. So that's kind of a segue to what Arreva offers is ExceedFurther. It's really the only all-in-one cloud-based digital fundraising, donor relationship management, healthcare hospitality applications, and auction software out there. This is not a sales pitch, just to let you know there's lots of great info here. And, we have a very unique approach. I think in the industry, our organization has been around for decades. And this is very purpose-built software that can help you with just about everything you need to know about your donors, and then to be able to activate effective strategies. So we're happy to talk with you more about that. You can take a look at some of the things that we offer from digital fundraising, unlimited donations, pledges, recurring gifts, tribute, memorial gifts, a lot of the things we've been talking about. We partner with just the real stalwarts in the industry in terms of matching giving and wealth research and prospect research, and everything comes into very easy to use, robust databases that have a relational approach. So those are some important things. Everything has to be, wherever you go, you have to be able to do things on your phone. If we didn't believe that and know that, as humans 2 years ago, coming up on 3 years ago now, as Barbara reminded us. We know that now. And I'm going to tell you right now, for those of you who have been saying, you know, our donors just are not tech savvy, you know, that our audience is not tech savvy. Maybe so. One thing I'm going to offer to you, though, is that even those who weren't are now. So if you don't think that someone during social distancing had to learn how to use their phone and be able to activate and connect with their grandkids and be able to connect with each other, we are the digital transformation is well underway, and you know, it has arrived. So it's important to do that. You still want to do all the real let's call it real world kinds of things, but you want to make sure that everything is responsive and able to be done anywhere, anytime. We also have MaestroSoft, an Arreva company, which does auction bidding and text-based solutions, really is the master when it comes to everything you need to do in terms of auctions and auction-related events, as well as digital fundraising. And so everything from auctioneers to auction consulting, virtual event managers, you know, lots of solutions out there who do one part of that, but don't bring everything together, and you're kind of on your own, and they assume that you know what you're doing from that standpoint. But that's a really big plus of how we've been able to help nonprofits. Everything, again, very digital. And I would tell you that we have a phrase that we like to say out here, and I just love it because it sums up what we do. And quite honestly, it sums up what Barbara does. It's we're with you for good. It doesn't mean we're hanging around or stalking you. We are with you for the good that you do, and we are helping you to reach your mission. I joked with Barbara, there's a phone booth here for those of you in a different demo who aren't familiar with what's behind the superhero here, but we would like to invite you to step into a virtual phone booth and have a little bit of a transformation and come out with more superpowers than you began with, because you all have many, many things you do wonderfully. We all can always learn and grow. And so we want to offer you a chance, and I'm going to open a poll right now as we kind of move forward to let you weigh in. If you would like to have a fundraising superpowers, let's call it, consultation and demo, just let us know. And this could be 5 minutes. This is with the Arreva and MaestroSoft team, and we spend many times, people may or may not do business with us, but they always leave with something valuable. We'll help them how to do learn how to do something they do better, or we'll turn them on to something that they may not be familiar with. The feedback is always wonderful, and literally could be 5 minutes, could be 3 minutes, could be an hour, could be longer than that. I'm not going to give you the details of how long we've spent with people, but we are there, and we get enthralled. It's like getting lost in a good book. So we're there. Let us know. I'll bring this up again as we reach the end. But if you are interested in having us contact you, or you're not sure, let us know. And as I do that, I'm just going to move forward here to let Barbara share just a brief overview of Windmill Hill Consulting. And as she does that, when I finish here, I'll give you a chance to stay connected to Barbara for lots of great info. And I'll let you know in a moment about our next great session that's coming up with Barbara as well. Barbara?
Yeah, so there are lots of different ways you can stay connected with me, both on social platforms. You're welcome to sign up for my newsletter, which I send out about once a month, sometimes do a couple other touch points throughout the month. And certainly if there's any questions that occur to you as we wrap up this webinar, you are welcome to email me as well.
So you see a poll up right now. If you would like to stay in touch with Barbara, and what that means is, if you'd like to, get the communications that are coming out, she sends out wonderful things. Barbara, it's fun. I got to tell you, we talk so much because of these sessions we're working on, and because there's, we're kindred spirits, but I will see an email like, oh, it's from Barbara. I think it's about something, that we're working on. No, it's not, but it's about something really good that I wanted to see, so there's lots of really useful information. And I think we're partners because we really share the same philosophy. We are with you for good. We're trying to provide helpful advice. I think, we want to really help nonprofits thrive, not just survive during these times. So if I would just encourage you, if you would love to be put in touch, or just have a box check that Barbara stays in touch with you, I promise you it is very valuable information. And like everything, you always have the opportunity to say, enough. I'd rather just get on the phone with her, and it's a great thing. So I see some people responding there. I will leave that up for just a moment because I want to do that just in honor of the great support that Barbara is providing here today. I would love to have you have a conversation. And I'm going to move us forward to our Q&A session. The poll is still up there. If you've already answered or you don't want to see it, you can simply close that. I'll leave it there for just another moment. And I'm going to move us forward, Barbara, to our Q&A session, okay? And at this point, I'm just going to tease some of these up, and they are in no particular order, all right? But I'm going to just tell you earlier in the session, when you were talking about reactivating donors, low activation rates for those greater than who've been lapsed for greater than 3 years. Mm-hmm. First off, the person submitting this question, said, "Wow," and then asked, "Where might that research be found?" Do you remember where you saw that? Or are there places that you would recommend in general for research on some of these things that will probably maybe make us cringe a bit, but also get us active, right? Like, wow, we need to take some action.
Yeah, so the fundraising effectiveness program, and I can't remember if that's specifically where I got it. I think it was. There's a fundraising effectiveness project. If you just Google it, you'll find it. It's a program of AFP and a number of other partners. They do a regular set of analysis on trends, and I'm fairly sure sometimes they do focus on particular segments like this. I'm fairly sure it came from there, and it's just important to understand. We know no organization fundraises in isolation or in a vacuum. And so understanding what those general trends are is important so that you can see sort of how you stack up against them. So I would say that it probably came from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. And if you go onto their website, you'll be able to get access to a whole bunch of other reports that they've been doing, which is really useful insights that I find perhaps that I bring often into my presentations.
That's great. Another question for you, this is back from earlier, right? But what are some recommendations you have on how to engage all your small amount first-time donors, especially for a small development team?
Lean into the tech as much as you can. So, there are so many great tech resources now that are accessible and affordable for nonprofits of all sizes. So to the extent that you can automate your communications, absolutely do that. You've got MailChimp, you've got Constant Contact, you've got platforms within your CRMs, and make sure that you can build meaningful and engaging communications, tell those stories, schedule them out, make sure that they are that they don't overwhelm your limited staff, but still are something that are just regular touch points that you can then schedule and sort of turn on and leave and then just go on autopilot.
Well, and automation is definitely a key concept, right? And I'll share with you, I mentioned ExceedFurther. ExceedFurther allows you to set up so that when someone makes a donation, they receive an automatic notification. Your team receives a notification that someone donated. It comes directly into your database. It then can prompt the right kinds of best practices, because automation doesn't do, automation sounds great, but what it does is it facilitates you being able to do the right thing. So you can pick up the phone and give a call. You can send out a thank you letter that's very personalized, thanking them for their gift, and even remarking, if you have the right data, about how maybe they're going to be attending this event and you're looking forward to seeing them, right? You have that kind of information. That's going to really resonate. And then back to kind of what we were sharing regarding the newsletters and the things that Barbara and Arreva send out. Do the same thing with your donors. So when you're reaching out to them, telling them, would you like to stay informed about upcoming things, or would you like to hear about some of the stories of how we're helping XYZ in the community? Those are ways to keep them engaged. People will let you know if they don't want to be communicated with, and typically we tend to be shy about communicating, and the damage there is much worse, right? Because people say, well, you just don't care. There's a piece here, I would say too, I'm just going to share this comment. There's lots of great stuff out here. We use social media, especially Facebook donation events, such as next week for a Giving Tuesday. And by the way, you can't see this Tuesday. In this case, it's spelled TWO. So they just find up creative ways to do that. I would just tell you that, this is great. We always encourage. I think social media is terrific. Also, you want to make sure whatever you're doing, all of these different channels bring into your organization. So you think of some of the crowdsourcing, fund me types of things that are out there. I think everything's great. Anyone that's trying to help you do good, but be aware that in many cases you aren't owning that data. It's not something that's coming to you. So whatever you're doing, making sure that that happens so that you can continue that conversation, because otherwise it truly is one and done. This moves us to the next question, Barbara. Is there a good target for how many asks you send out to your donor base, especially over multiple channels? I know my board is, there's the board again. We love you. I know my board is concerned about tiring people out, irritating folks with multiple asks. We all are. We don't want to do that. What would you say to that? I have some thoughts as well.
Yeah, I would. So there is a balance in over soliciting, and in that study that I showed earlier about why donors give, the flip side of that, to that particular survey of high net worth philanthropists, the top reason why they stopped giving was because of over solicitation. Now, I interpret that one of two ways. Truly, there are shops that outsource their solicitations and their direct marketing. And yeah, sometimes they do pound. I'm going to use that really sort of harsh word, but they do pound their audience with tons of appeals. I made a contribution to an organization in December. I've since gotten two print appeals. One as a thank you. Would you like to become a monthly giver? A week or two after that, thanks so much. Would you like to give another gift? Within the span of 4 weeks. So that's over soliciting. But where it becomes, but the other side of that, I feel like, is when donors don't feel that they're hearing those stories of impact, and they are getting, they see that there's a way that their gift is actually making a difference. Your organization might only mail once or twice a year, but if the donors forget that, they don't hear from you, and then the next piece of mail that they get is, or the next email they get is an appeal. They'll say, wait, didn't I just make a gift? It could have been a year ago, but they will feel that perception of over solicitation. So I would say no less than 4 times a year, but in that context of asking, thanking, and reporting. If you are only defaulting to a one time a year, guess what? That is no longer the way that donors are operating. So, keep it so that you are touching, you're touching the, your donor base, in some way. So you might do an e-appeal one quarter, you might do a print appeal. You're making sure you've got those really nice newsletters or touch points that are reporting out some stories, some great, updates on what you're doing. I would say 4 times a year, if you can manage that. Anything less than, but certainly not once a year, definitely more than that.
So I'm going to add a little bit to that. That's terrific stuff. I would tell you one of the things that you often you maybe don't hear is from those that become frustrated or less enthusiastic about working with your organization is the only time I ever hear from XYZ organization is when they're asking for money.
Yeah. That's
so
right.
One of the big pieces is that, and I will tell you this from a marketing standpoint, have a reason to communicate, because people are typically, when they're saying you're reaching out to me too much, it oftentimes is a way of saying you're reaching out to me with the same thing. So I have kids, and I've had kids for a long time, right? So I've gone through all the different phases, just absolutely love them. But I can tell you they've taught me everything I need to know about the ask, both the good and the bad. And one of the things that happens is, coming over and over, there's persistence. Yes, you'll get through to some people by saying, can we go now? Can we go to the movie? Can we go to the movie? The best way to ask is to find some reason to ask, or find some way to communicate differently. So that's an important piece of that. It's not just how many times you ask, it's about how you ask. And it's also about having earned the currency to be able to ask. So if you've earned the goodwill by sharing with them the impact of what they've done, or you've been able to let them know something great that's happening that's useful, that other communication is going to be received in a positive light. So there is no one answer to that, but I think those are some important things to know. And it's also not asking the same way every time. Right. So if you can ask, I'm a fan of digital. I'm also a fan of real life, more so now than over the past 3 years. Right. Being able to human is a good thing. So pick up the phone sometimes. And like I said, take advantage of that to resist the urge to ask every time. And just to say, we just want to let you know, we are so appreciative and want to let you know that here's something really good that happened. And you'll find more often than not that what happens is they'll say, so are there opportunities to give again? You'll have something happening because that's just human nature, and it's the goodness of folks. That's what we love about this community. I'm going to let people just saying here as we kind of wrap up here as well on this part of it. There are a lot of good conversations happening out here on the chat, so I'm going to let those just happen. But we have also had someone mention in terms of these sessions that we've been talking about and offering with Barbara or with us. We're going to reach out to you, so you don't have to do anything else. If you said, how will we hear from you? We'll reach out to you, and we'll reach out to you in multiple ways, and we'll even reach out to you as humans to make sure that we engage with you, right? So we'll practice what we preach. I'm going to tell you, if you have questions, keep throwing them in the chat box or the question box as we move forward to the next piece. And I'm just going to let you know that if you like this, and if you know that someone serendipitously put up the first piece about boards, our next session, exactly 1 month from today on March 17th, it's your lucky day. We are going to be doing another session with Barbara, 3 reasons why your board doesn't fundraise and how to change that now. And, the alternate title, because I am telling you, we just put that out there because, listen, it grabs your attention. We've get a lot of feedback on things. People will say, we love our board. We love your board. Everyone loves your board. I'm going to give you a little bit of a heads up. Oftentimes, the answer is making it easy for them to give and being able to really give them the story to be able to do what they already want to do. So this is all positive, all good. But, Barbara, if you have anything you want to say in terms of just a synopsis about this topic, folks, this communication will be going out to everyone very shortly. It's already up on our website if you want to register, or just drop a note in the chat. We'll make sure you get that. But I rest assured, we already have got your number, so to speak, and we'll get this out to you.
That's great. And this is a great webinar to invite your board members to attend as well, because it looks at all the different ways that boards are holding boards back from being, comfortable, or at least accepting of their role in fundraising. So definitely encourage you to invite your board members to join.
Terrific. I'm going to just let you know, this is our boilerplate, is the term that we have here. You can read for yourself. So just to let you know, we talked a little bit about that. I'm going to leave this up for just a moment as we say our goodbyes and thank yous and final words. And I'm going to let you know, from Arreva's standpoint, we are so grateful that you took the time to join us, because you've enriched this session by your participation and your presence here. So thank you very much. Please join us for additional things. I'm going to let Barbara have the final words and just share anything you'd like to let folks know, any thank yous, anything else as we close out.
That's great. And David, if you can put that poll back up, I see somebody put in the comment that they stepped away and they saw a poll about, I think it was to sign up for my newsletter. So
I'm just going to tell you real quickly here, because I'm sorry, I got two wishes. I put it up twice. I can't go back and relaunch it without losing the other. However, just by your putting that in the chat box and saying, you missed me, raise your hand and we will make sure you're added to that list.
Awesome. Thank you. I just want to say a quick thank you, everyone. I know your time is precious, and you are in fact your own superheroes in your organization. So keep up the good work, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, or if there are ways that I can help you to raise even more money.
Okay. Not the final words about the session, but thank you, Barbara. Such a pleasure to have you here. And I'll just let you know the feedback from everyone has been great. So we'll look forward to seeing you very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe and stay healthy. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.